But when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of something that every economist that I have met thought was a terrible idea, and it had no political cost, and that was demonetization. And I thought of that when I was reading the book, because I thought of the gap between how people perceive something and how it actually is.
But so we actually looked at this quite carefully. So there was a small political cost in the following sense. One thing we can do is we can look at the mandi prices, and we can use the past few years to predict what the prices should have been in 2016 in the mandi. And we see that prices are generally depressed 25% or so. Then we use the fact that where they are more depressed in UP, is the BJP vote share lower? The answer is it is lower, slightly lower. Okay. Now, here's what and the rub is. Lots of people did not actually were not actually affected one way or the other, or actually were happy that the prices are lower. It's not clear to me that there was everybody, if you were a school teacher in Bahrain, you are actually better off, because this year the mandi prices have crashed. That's great. Atta is cheap. It's not clear that everybody was, we shouldn't expect everybody to have been unhappy. Second, I think Mr. Modi's brilliance here is that he understood that one of the claims of citizenship is the right to sacrifice. We did a survey, all of this were a part of a bunch of studies, where we asked people, was demonetization good for the country, good for you, bad for the country, bad for you, good for the country, bad for you, etc. And the median opinion, in fact the 70th percentile opinion was bad for the country, good for the country, bad for me. People were very clear that it was bad for them. That didn't stop them from voting, because they, I think, figured that they were persuaded by the logic that this was good for the country. I think eventually, and by the time the UP election showed up, it was too soon to tell.
Fair enough.
They could have plausibly thought, yes, it's hurting, but Mr. Modi asked me to sacrifice. I'm flattered. I like the fact that I'm asked to sacrifice. It's a right of
part of a national project.
It's a national project. I'm willing to give up something for it, and it's good for the country. I think it's only much later that I think the data kept coming in that it hadn't seemed to have done so much, etc. And that was disputed, etc. But I think if you want to look at the single strongest impact of this was the UP elections. In the UP elections, a lot of people, overall, I think the sentiment was, this is great for the nation. And it's a complicated thing to understand why it may not be great for the nation. And it clearly depends on exactly your understanding of how corruption functions in this context, and why in the Calcutta, in Bada Bazaar, the price of a rupee basically crashed. Eventually people just managed to transact. So I think all of that's too complicated for a voter